Love being in the sea, surfing, hanging out with the kids on the beach. Without sounding arrogant, I was a reasonably attractive young woman, and now I have a substantial facial defect. I couldn't leave the house because I couldn't deal with people staring at me.
Cancer forever changed Vikki's life and appearance. It started when her daughter was 2.
Love being in the sea, the park with my daughter, and kids have run away.
For nearly 5 years, Vikki had frequent nosebleeds.
My nose started to get quite sore. My little stepson would bop me on the nose or something by accident, and I would see stars. I was in so much pain. It would bleed for a whole toilet roll of nosebleed. It was awful.
She saw multiple doctors and was repeatedly treated for sinus infections.
No one knew what was causing it. They just said, "Oh, we can see you've got a little sore," and just kept cauterizing it and hoping it would stop bleeding. October, November 2023, I noticed that my nose was changing shape, and it was starting to get a red patch about here. And it was I was getting a bit of a hump in my nose, and it was just a bit odd. So I kept going to the doctors, telling them that was happening. And in the end, I actually had to produce photos of people had caught me on the side profile, and you could see sort of summer 2023, lovely straight, lovely Roman nose. And then by summer 2024, I had a big dip here. And then my nose was like a hook, and it had been essentially my septum had collapsed. And that was when they really started to pay attention. I got to the point I couldn't wear sunglasses because the pinching here was too sore. I was getting a lot of migraines and things just from the pressure of what was going on.
After a biopsy, Vikki was told she had SCC.
And I was like, what's that? And they said, you need treatment. They asked me what my cosmetic preferences were. And I had no idea what they were talking about at this point.
At the time, she didn't realize SCC meant squamous cell carcinoma.
They gave me a little leaflet that said, "You have cancer," like a little Macmillan leaflet, and sent me on my way. And I was like, I think I've just been told I've got cancer. What's happening? She booked me an appointment to come in and meet with the head of ENT. It was only when we went home and started to search nasal cancers that we realised how bad it could be. And because it had been left for so long, the risk to my brain, my lungs, my lymph system, no one told us this might have spread and we need to do some tests to see if it spread or anything. We were just told, "Oh, you've got a bit of skin cancer and we'll just take it out." That's all. So yeah, kind of a real mixed bag in that we left thinking it's fine, they know what it is, we can get on top of it now. And then by the time we'd Googled at home, I think I was certainly at the point where I was convinced I was going to die, and panic attacky. And I knew from the scans they had that it had gone beyond the skin and got into the septum. And if you Google SCC spreading, it's not good news. They didn't think it had spread to my skull bone, just to my nasal bone. It was essentially all round one nostril, because I only ever used to have the nosebleed on one side. All round one nostril, had got into the septum, gone right down the septum, because that's a good 5 to 7 centimeters into your head. Hadn't spread to the roof of my mouth or anything, but it had gone into the nasal bone and really eaten away at the nasal bone. But half of my nose was okay. But he said because it's breached the surface and that red, it almost looked like broken capillaries on my nose. That was it getting into the surface skin. So he said we're going to have to remove all of this and your whole septum. Because I was young, they wanted to prioritize cosmetic outcome. He started talking about forehead flaps, and that was when I just had a total meltdown. It was I was just like, how is this happening to me? In the end, we said let's just do the subtotal, so leave the tip, and then see where we are. So I went for that surgery. The plan was I'd have that surgery late October, early November, and then we would send off the tissue for further histology. The prosthetics department made me a plastic cup that I used to have to tape to my face, so it still looked like I had a nose. I was just wearing a protective shield over it. The histology showed that whilst I was really lucky and the cancer hadn't spread, so I had none in my lymph nodes or my lungs or anything, it was behaving really aggressively, and it was starting to get into my nerves, my capillaries, and it was heading for lymph channels. So they said because I was young, they wanted to throw everything at it, which meant chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and no reconstruction until I'd healed from all of that.
Vikki underwent 6 weeks of daily radiotherapy, along with weekly chemotherapy sessions.
Radiation to your head and neck is brutal. They offered me a feeding tube before I started because I said I didn't have a nose, so I wouldn't be allowed one in my nose. I had to have it fitted in my stomach, and it made me feel icky. So I thought I'd try. I was very sensitive to radiation. I had the chemo on Thursday and got admitted Friday night because I couldn't stop vomiting. And I was already on soft food only because I had all these blisters from the radiation. That just carried on getting worse. It was sore. And then by I think about week 2.5, 3-ish, I looked like I had a permanent sunburn from like here down. And I was just drinking. They give you these milkshakes that are just like protein, vitamin shake things. And that was all I could do. And even that, I had to gargle an aspirin to numb my mouth to be able to drink anything at all. My throat had got really sore. I was losing my voice. So it was a bit of a like a whisper anyway, which is not good for a 2-year-old. And then it got to the point where my tongue was so swollen and blistered that it hurt to talk. So I would just sit, and even opening my mouth was sore. My hair started to fall out. So this part of my hair thinned, but you can see under here, essentially where the radiation shot through my face, it all fell out at the back. So that was quite emotionally difficult. And then it was just a standard like chemo nausea, joint pains. All my hands started cracking because it makes the skin on your hands really dry. Dry eyes, like lots of when you get radiated in your nasal and face area, your sinuses just release mucus all the time. So I was like choking on mucus and like crusty, horrible bogies. Yuck. And your mouth gets really dry. So when they're radiating here, your salivary glands just look up. And yeah, you get a horrendously dry mouth. And many of those side effects will stay with me forever.
Then it was time for her first reconstructive surgery.
The plastic surgeon said, we're already taking a piece of your arm because they had to rebuild the inside of my nose. So that was going to be my arm. And he said, we could take a bigger bit, fold it in half, and then like have the inside and the outside made out of your arm. So the color match won't be as good. It won't be face skin and have pores and things like that. But you won't have to have the forehead flap. And if it bothers you, you could go back and have the forehead flap later when your daughter's a bit older and she can understand what's going on. What they did was take a piece of my skull up here, got like a big dent in my head, and they screwed it into my forehead to give them something to like hang the skin on. And then they took a big bit of my arm and folded it in half with a blood supply. So the blood, you can probably see I've got a dent here. So it's still quite swollen. The blood supply ran down here and connected into my neck here. And then they replaced the skin. I got a nice big wiggly scar going all up my arm. They replaced that with skin from my hip. So I woke up with like a C-section scar, which was the least important bit. My arm was in a cast because you can't move your wrist while this skin like gets all its blood supply and everything. So I had this big cut all the way up my arm. My arm was in a cast. I had like my neck was massively swollen where they'd plumbed it all in, and I wasn't allowed to twist my head or anything while that all healed. My face was out here and I just had stitches everywhere. It was a 14-hour surgery. Every part of me was chopped and moved bits of my body all over the place.
She struggled with her changing appearance as she waited for more reconstructive surgeries.
Without sounding arrogant, I was a reasonably attractive like young woman. And now I have a substantial facial defect that like obviously I'm still in the process. It will look better than it does right now. But I have had periods where I couldn't leave the house because I couldn't deal with people staring at me. I carried a sort of a shame both for how I looked and having brought like cancer to my family. My daughter's supposed to have a really fun, free childhood, and instead she's got a mum who won't leave the house and who is like needs a nap in the middle of the day because she's on chemo and things like that. we went to a role play centre at the weekend, and there were kids that came up to play with her and looked at me, and in that innocent way that kids do when they're a bit scared, just walked off. And you have to deal with like, well, is my daughter going to have less friends because her mummy looks different? And yeah, that I think unexpectedly has been the hardest bit, is the I'm okay with how I look. And I'm a lot more confident now. Like, I go out in public like this. Until really recently, I was wearing plasters across so you couldn't see what was going on, and probably thought I had a nose job or something. Um, and I get more and more confident with it. But that has been the biggest change, um, and the hardest thing to deal with, really. When I felt myself spiraling, I could pull myself back and remember what was important, and I was still here. I've been quite good at watching my thoughts and doing it. I have had really dark moments, more so on treatment, when the pain just got too much. I checked out of life for a little bit, and I wasn't working. And I think when I rejoined the human race again, very slowly, like I got myself a new job working from home, so I didn't have to go out. Um, but I started to realize that people still respected me, and they still thought I was good at my job and all of that stuff. And then when I started to love myself again, because I think between letting my nutrition go, and then I'd got a bit lazy, I'd go out for like a mental health walk, but I wasn't committing to my exercise or anything. And when I started to love myself again and do the exercise, do the eating properly, do things that I just enjoyed because I deserved them, it definitely started to rise my self-confidence. And then there was like a charity funded styling workshop thing, for people whose appearances have been impacted by cancer. And I went along to that, and that was a real turning point for me, where it kind of made me think, just because you look different doesn't mean that you need to wear black and hide away. Like, you can still express yourself and be out there. The amount of people that say, "Oh, what happened to you?" And I say, "Oh, I had cancer in my nose," and they're like, "I didn't even know you could get that." When people get head and neck cancer, I think because of the appearance change or the speech changes or whatever they're facing, they tend to hide away. And that means that people don't come into contact with it. People like myself, putting yourself out publicly and saying, "This happened to me, it could be you." Kindness is like arguably one of the most important things. And that, like, we're all just here to have fun. And we waste so much time doing work, chasing money, like whatever else, and we quite often forget to have fun. So I do have a lot more fun, like, nowadays, and just do things I want to do them. I'm not attached to my appearance anymore. For me, that's quite important, because I always wanted to raise a daughter who knew she was more than her appearance, and now I feel like I've made a mental shift that means that it's a no-brainer that I will do that, because it's the least interesting thing about me.